Hello, welcome to this Tech Talk, creating an omnichannel chatbot with Google Dialogflow API using Kony Quantum. My name is Nguyen. So our high-level goal would be to create a native chatbot application and a PWA app using Google Dialogflow API version 2. These are the five main activities I will cover. First is the required setup in Dialogflow and the two key components that you will need in order to integrate with it and use it. Second is we'll download and import Kony Fabric App, which is a collection of APIs from our Kony Marketplace. So this Kony Fabric App will allow you to integrate with Google OAuth 2 APIs and also with Dialogflow. The third task will be to review, to test, and publish the Kony Fabric App. The fourth major activity would be the mobile channel chatbot app using Kony Visualizer. Then lastly, we'll create the PWA app. The purpose of this chat is to allow users to query a manufacturer of appliance to get information on, ovens, microwaves, refrigerators. Okay. So on the far right-hand side, the backend, we will have Google OAuth 2, and we'll also have Dialogflow v2 APIs. The left-hand side and the middle piece are part of Kony Quantum, our platform. The left-hand side is Kony Visualizer, which is the what you see, what you get canvas designer that you will create your application from here. Now, the middle layer called Kony Fabric will allow you to integrate and make available identity service and integration service, right? Specifically, the get token in order to exchange the private key and get a token from OAuth 2, and also the get intent, where you send in the user text input and you will get the expected chat response. Next, I'd like to walk through the required setup of Dialogflow, and then I'm finally going to point out the two key items that you must have in order to build a chatbot app using Dialogflow, right? You make sure you get the project ID, and make sure you create your Google Cloud private key and download it to save it. So here's an example of what that private key JSON look like. So compare yours against what I have here. So first thing is we're going to go to the Dialogflow Console. So that's the URL, console.dialogflow.com. Create your account and sign in. You're basically going to create a very simple agent. I call mine Agent. Right? So under intents, for us, I have several different intents here, but the first one would be info. So here you provide the training phrases to the system and the expected response you want from Dialogflow, right? So for us, it's a user saying something like he's looking for information about appliance. Can you provide details on appliance? Can you email me information on my oven? Do you have a manual? So any training phrase that is valid for your use case, right? And at the bottom would be the response that you expect to get back from Dialogflow. And then I have other intent just to narrow down exactly what the user is asking for. For example, a refrigerator could be a side-by-side, right? There are different type of refrigerator. So I'm narrowing down based on this intent. And then, these are the expected responses that you would provide from Dialogflow. Okay. So the overall is not to show you how to use Dialogflow, but I want to show you the steps required in order to create a chatbot app using Kony Quantum with Dialogflow. Okay. So once you set up these two, you can also try it from here. So let's try it and say hi. And Dialogflow come back with, hello, how can I help you? And I would say, I like info on your fridge. And then the response is, I see, I can email you manual for refrigerator. Specifically, I like info on the side-by-side. All right, now the two key items. When you click on the settings, under project ID, remember this project ID because make sure you have it and save it because you will need it. Also, of course, V2 APIs is selected here. But under service account, you will create that private key and download it into your PC so that you can reuse that private key later on. Okay, and in my presentation, I also list there's a link to that Kony Marketplace Dialogflow, and it's going to show you the step-by-step on how to create that private key. Okay, and again, here's an example of what that private key look like. So when you click on this link, it's going to take you to the Google Cloud Platform, and you can see here's the new agent, and the step to actually create and download that private key is fairly complex. But if you browse that URL that I mentioned, this part, and those steps are very well documented by our marketplace team. So here's that URL under how to. When you click on Sign Up Authentication, it's going to take you to this link. So this is showing you, the same project ID and service account, and it walks you through the steps on how to create a private key. It's a JSON object, and how you download it. Okay, so make sure you follow the documentation. It's very well documented. Follow it so that you can create the private key and have it ready. Okay. All right, what we're going to do next is we're going to download the Fabric application from Marketplace, which is this piece. Now, Kony Fabric is the middleware layer part of Kony Quantum Platform, right? So it's going to provide the identity service, it's going to provide the integration service. And so all this is done, it's wrapped inside a downloadable component from Marketplace. You don't have to recreate all of this. It's a matter of downloading it, importing it, and making tweaks, add in that private key, that we just talked about so that you can get information from the backend. Okay. Now another way to look at this is the Kony Fabric is shown in the green boxes here, right? So its three operations are handling login. It handles the get token request by exchanging the private key with Google OAuth and getting back an access token. Then it will make a call to get intent, the API call to Dialogflow, exchanging the user request. I like info on your fridge, and getting the chat response back. Okay. So how do you download the marketplace fabric component? So I provided that link. When you click on this link, you're going to go to this web page, and here's that Dialogflow Fabric app, right? And you need a Kony account in order to log in and download the zip file. And I also provided the links where you can register and create your Kony account, right? So it's a matter of creating your account, log in, download the zip file into some place on your PC, and make sure you remember where this zip file is, because the next is that you import that into the Fabric console. Okay. So I also list the steps in order to import that Kony Fabric using the console website. It's manage.kony.com, and basically you go through the import procedure. Okay, so let's go here. So in Chrome, under manage.kony.com, I have to sign in. So let me sign in into my account. Okay. So now that I'm in there in the Fabric console, when you log in, you will be in your own trial Fabric account. And these are the vertical menu options. Kony Fabric has extensive features that I would encourage you to browse and learn from all the documentation that we have on our website, kony.com. But mainly you want to click on apps, right? And then you will see the import. This is where you import that zip file that you just downloaded from Marketplace. So you click on import. You click on browse, right? And here's that zip file that I download. When you click on open, you have an option to change the name. But for me, it's Dialogflow v1.1.1, right? You can also change the version, and then when you click on import. I'm not going to click it because it will take some time, so I'm just going to cancel and switch to my own account, which I already have imported this, right? And there it is under Fabric Apps, Dialogflow v1.1.1. When you click on that, you will see under Identity, there's a service called User Repo, which is our default user repository. But of course, I encourage you to learn the different options, the different way that we support identity management. We support most standard identity management. So let's look at the user repo. You can create or add the user that you want to provide service to. So it's a matter of providing the relevant information and click Add User. I already have two profiles. One is called DAI, well, my first name, Dai at Kony.com. and then there's the second one, right? And you can also test the user login by clicking this button. Okay. Under integration, we actually have two operations. The first one is Dialogflow Authentication with the get token operation. So Dataflow Authentication is basically a JSON service, but here's the target URL, Google APIs OAuth 2, right? And notice under this identity service, it's requiring user repo that you saw from here, from the under identity, right? So it requires the user to log in with a valid profile provided by this identity service. Okay. Now, when you look at get token, so again, here's the target URL, right? And it's a for security level, it's an authenticated app user, so it's going to require the user to pass authentication. Okay. All right. So here's the call. Assertion is a request input, and the response output will be an access token. Okay. Now, do pay attention here under advanced. What you download from Marketplace is going to come with this JavaScript preprocessor. This is where you will copy that private key, one of those two required items I mentioned from Dialogflow, right? First is the project ID, and second is the private key. So here, you will need to copy your private key that you downloaded from Dialogflow and paste it in this object. Okay. Once that is done, it's a matter of saving your operation, okay, and then you are ready to test. So you want to test the middleware fabric to see if we can exchange token with Google OAuth 2. All right. So all I have to do is click on save and fetch response, right? This request parameter is actually handled by this preprocessor. So it's going to take information from your private key, you create the assertion, then we'll save that off to Google OAuth 2, and then in the response, we should have the access token. Okay? So let's click on that. And now it asks us to authorize. Remember, when we set up this service level, we ask for user repo to be the identity service. That is why this happened, right? So I click on authorize. It pop up the text box for the user ID and password. So let me change to that test profile that I have. Click on sign in. Okay. And the service, the Fabric service has exchanged with the backend and given us the access token, as you can see here. So I'm going to save this access token because I need it for the second test. Control C. Okay. So once you have token, then you know that this exchange worked, right? At least from Kony Fabric, you are able to talk to Google OAuth 2, exchanging the private key, and getting back the access token. Okay? Next, the interface to Dialogflow. Now remember, all this is done for you. All you have to do is download from Marketplace and import into your trial Fabric account. Okay, so for this service definition, you can see that it is a Dialogflow service type. Right, it still requires the user to log in. Okay. Under get intent, the name of the operation is get intent, but it is mapped to the exact projects agent session detect intent Dialogflow API call. Okay. Still require authentication. Okay. And then you can also look at the request input. The request input is for text would be the user text string. I like details on fridge, right? The language code, the time zone, the project ID. Remember, one of the key items from Dialogflow. A project ID go under the default values, and then the session ID will be just a random text string. Now, these are needed in order to test the middleware layer, right? Your actual front-end application is going to provide this information, okay? Now, under header, still under the request input, this authorization requires the access token that you get from this call, remember? So I already copied it into memory. So now I'm going to change this access token. It uses the keyword bearer and hitting Control V to paste that access token that I just got. And when we are ready to test, just click on Save and Fetch Response. Okay, so here's the output from that test operation. So the input is I like details on fridge, and the response output as part of query result object is this is the text. Understood. You need a manual for refrigerator. All right. So now at this point, we have proven that the middleware layer work, right? Kony Fabric work. You can exchange token with the backend, and you can send test chat messages and get a response, right? So we've proven that this part work, right? Now, next is we'll build the actual native application. But I want to point out that under my presentation, I documented what you need to do here under Kony Fabric in order to review, test, and publish your Fabric app, right? Remember, taking the private key and look under Advanced to paste it in, right? These are the default values that you want to give input so that you can test from the middleware side, okay? And once you are ready, you actually need to publish your Fabric app. So going back to the console, to publish this app, it's just clicking on that publish button, making sure this is checkmarked, and click on publish. Okay. I'm not going to click on it because it takes some time, and then I already published mine. And you can see by looking at status here. Next, let's talk about how we put the native application together using Kony Visualizer. Okay, so this is Kony Visualizer. What you see, what you get, app designer tool, and development. Okay, so I have two forms here for under mobile, form login and form chat. And when I click on form login, how I put this together is by using one of the standard template from our default library. So when you go under default library and you look for login, when you expand it, here's Acme login template. Other templates are also here. And it's a matter of just creating this form by hitting new form, right? So let's say you create a new form and you drag that over. So I'm going to change the device to iPhone 7 so that it's a little easier to see here. All right. So we'll put our focus on the login button, and then under properties and action, you see the events that are associated with this button. So here's on click. Let's select that. Okay. And now you have this is the action editor with the script that I built beforehand. So let's look at this action script for the login button. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to invoke the identity service, right? So I invoke the identity service. Then you pick login, and the choices are displayed here. So you pick login, and then you want to check the mapping. So the mapping allowed you to associate the on-screen forms text boxes for. So you see here, this is the username, and this one for password, and you want to make that as the input into the service call, right? It's when you call login, you're going to need the user ID and the password, and it's a matter of clicking here and clicking there to make this association and to move the data from the user element to the input of the service call, right? And the same thing with password. All right. And then it's going to come back with success or failure. Under success, so once we pass user authentication, we're going to call the integration service, right? So by clicking invoke asynchronous service, and when I click on that, the choices are here, and I'll pick get token, right? Same naming convention from the Kony Fabric we went through earlier. All right. So on the callback from the service, what we're going to do now is take from the service the access token, and we're going to save it into a global variable. In my presentation, I documented them in this slide. There are 4 that I'm using. One is the GV access token. GV just stands for global variable, right? And then I have one called DF project ID. This is the project ID that one of the 2 key items that I mentioned earlier that you need, right? And then DF session ID, a random text string, okay? And they are found under edit and global variables, okay? So they are here. Now we are ready to navigate to form chat. Now let's look at the chat. Basically, I split the screen into 3 different sections: a top, a middle, and a bottom. And then the top, I'm just reusing one of my headers that is available from the default library of widgets. So it's this one. That's what I'm using. It's a matter of dragging this in. The user would type in his request. You click on the button chat. You talk to Dialogflow, and the response come back. You insert into this scroll list. Okay, so the widget I'm using is called a segment, and that segment is here. Okay, so it's a matter of dragging it in, rename it to segchat, and then the actual container for that text string coming back from Dialogflow is a label, and I rename it chat, and label is here. Okay. All right. For the bottom, one is a text area or a text box. So everything taking place when the user click on that chat button. Is when you click on the on-click, all I'm doing is invoke a function called process chat. So the controller code are here. And then you can also navigate to the definition from this link. So I click on that. All right, so here's the process chat function. All right. And then now we define the input into the service call. So the service ID, right? The project ID from global variables, the session ID from global variables, the input JSON object, the language code, the time zone, authorization bearer, and then the access token coming from our global variables. So once that is put together, we invoke the service. And when the service is called, it's going to return via this function, chat service underscore callback. We check for the status of the callback, whether it's successful or not. If it's not successful, we just alert with an error message. Okay. If it is successful, we're going to get from the response. So the response is the input to this call, so get intent, right? So we get, and it is a JSON object, so it's a mere, just using the JSON format to get the text string response. I save it in a variable, right? So we'll calculate the index, and this does the actual insertion of the chat response. Then it clears out the user chat so that he's ready for his next request. And then finally, we'll call the text-to-speech in order to say the chat response. Okay. All right, so I actually have a simulator running. So let's see what it does. Okay, so here, the login screen is what you saw here. I'm going to click on login, with the user ID and password I already filled out. Click on login. All right. So now you are in the chat, and I just want to make sure that it's similar as you expect. Okay. And then in the chat, I'm going to say hi, repeating the same test pattern that we done at the very beginning at the Dialogflow console. So hit chat.
Hello, how can I help you?
Right. So you see that I use the text-to-speech in order to say the response. Okay. And I like info on your fridge.
I see. Yes, I can email you a manual for the refrigerator.
So that is the native applications. So once you have this done and you are satisfied with how it is developed, you click on product, you click on bill, and so you can generate both iOS and Android, and you choose whether it's debug or release, and click bill. I just want to point out in my presentation, I also have these two functions, the chat service callback and the process chat function here, so that you can copy and use them. Now, next we'll tackle the PWA. So now, under responsive web, create the equivalent to forms, new form, and I'm going to rename this FRM login. And another form, rename it to FRM chat. Yeah. What I want to do is I will copy these design that you already done for mobile over to the responsive web instead of having to redo everything by hand. Okay, so For login, I'm going to copy this, copy from the mobile tab to responsive tab under form login, and I hit paste. I need to make sure that the login action script is there. So I click on login, and again under actions, I'm going to go to on click, and you can see that the action script that I expected is not here. So we need to go to the mobile side to copy it. You click on action, and here's the action script that you need, and you just copy. All right. Now going back to the responsive side button, it's focused, the on-click event, and it's a matter of pasting. There it is, and you can expand it so you can see that it's copy exactly what you need. And then the other thing that you make sure of is, of course, the mapping are still correct. So remember, when you call Fabric login, you have to provide the mappings of the user ID and password where that data is coming from. So click on Update Mapping, and you can see that the mapping didn't follow the copy. But it's easy enough to do. Open up the login widget and look for those two parameters, the username and the password. And you want to take the string and map it to the service input user ID. Same thing with password. Map it to the service input password string. Okay. Then on the success of the authentication, you are going to call the get token, right? And then remember, on the return from the service call, you want to make sure that you save that access token into this global variable GV access token, and that mapping is still there. So we don't have to do anything. And then finally, we navigate to form chat. Okay. All right. So that takes care of login. So login should be done. And we already saved it, but I'm going to make sure it's saved. Now let's go over the actual chat. Right now we don't have anything. So we're going to copy from the mobile side again, from chat. I'm just going to copy this top container. So copying everything. Copy. Okay. So in the form chat, now we click on paste. Okay. Minimize the form login. So once again, we have three area: the top area, the middle segment, and that segment should still be there. Yes, it's there. And then the bottom, the text area, text box for the user input and the button chat. But let's make sure action script for this button made it with the copy. So if you hit chat, put the focus on it, and go to action, and on click, and you can see that it is red. It's not correct. There's something wrong. So here in the mobile, we invoke the process chat function. But when you look under the function available to the desktop responsive web, it's not there. That just means we have to copy those two functions from the mobile side. So it's under controller, another chat controller. So here are the definition for those two functions. I'm just going to copy them. Control C to copy. Then scrolling down to controllers, chat controller, and you can see it's empty. I'm just going to paste them in. And save. So once you save, now if we go back to the action script, the function should be available. The on-click event, the invoke function, okay, and process chat is not there so that you can select it. And you can see the red arrow went away. All right, one more thing to do is that this text area, you don't always have to require the user to click on chat, right? So the type, and it's more natural to handle the enter button, right? As opposed to type something and click on chat, you can also handle the undone event. So when you click on undone, and it would do the same thing is it invoke the process chat function. One thing to note is seeing how big or how wide this middle area is as compared to a mobile form, right? So why not do something with this as opposed to just leaving the chat response with so much space? So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to split this area into two parts. The right-hand side will hold our set chat. And the left-hand side, you could do a number of things. It could be an advertisement space. It could be your browser holding information. Okay. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do first is group the chat segment into a flex container. Okay. And then I'm going to rename that flex right because it will be on the right-hand side. Okay. Now, under the parent, I'm going to drag in the other flex container. And I'm going to rename it flex left. Okay. But then under the parent container, I'm going to change the layout. Instead of free form, it's going to be flow horizontal. Okay. So flex left should come first, and then flex right. So in order to change the order, all we have to do is move it up. Okay. Now you can see that it's not laid out correctly. What I wanted to do is zero flush to the top left, right? It's just changing those coordinates to 0. And then its width is not going to be 100%, but only 50%. But its height is going to be 100%. Okay. And then I'm just going to drag in the image here as part of the advertisement, and making sure that image is centered in the panel. So I centered X to 50%. And I could also change the source to something more meaningful, for example, like the Kony logo. Okay, so it's there. Maybe make it a little bit bigger. Okay. Now, as for the chat message itself, it was 100% and you only want it to be 50%. So I'm going to change that to 50%. So now it's perfectly fit inside the width of our screen. And when the screen width is desktop or tablet size, for example, when you click on here, there are two sides, right? The advertisement panel or the flex container, and then the actual chat messages. But then what happens if the user is on a mobile device? You don't really want to squeeze everything into this small width, right? And so it'd be much better if this would go away, the advertisement panel go away, And this now becomes 100% again, right? Based on the screen size. So you can see that just by adjusting the width of the canvas. Okay, so how do we do this? What we can do is turn on forking for responsive web. We're going to turn it on. We're going to make sure it's for this size. For anything that's less than 640, we're going to the flex left container and we'll just make it invisible. All right. As for the flex right, it was 50%. Now you want it to be 100%. 100%. Okay. Save. I'll turn off forking. We are ready to test. But before I do that, let's make sure that responsive web design is still there. Yes, it is. And I'll click on configure channels. It is responsive web and hit save and run. So while this is building, we create the responsive web desktop application by copying code directly from the mobile side. The right way to do this is to turn your UI element into a reusable component. And once you do that, it exists under templates, and you can insert that reusable component across channels, across containers, wherever you need them, such that you only have to edit in one place, and that edit will spread across wherever the components are used. So here's the web application. Both user ID and password are already filled in. I'm just going to log in. All right, and let's test the chat.
Hello. How can I help you?
And test the responsive web by squeezing the width. So the chat window become full screen. And now back to normal. So with that, my Tech Talk is concluded. I thank you for attending.